In this episode, we are going to look at sickness. Why sickness?
Why are we suffering from diseases? There are three parts in a man which gets affected by the disease. The first one is the spirit, then the soul, then the body. We do not experience any pain in the spirit and in the soul, but in the body, yes, we do. Because of sickness, we often lose peace in the family. And sickness costs a lot of money, and some sickness even lead to death. Statistics show that over 50 million people die from illness. There are few reasons listed in the Holy Scriptures about sickness.
Diseases caused by human, diseases caused by the devil, diseases from God. First, diseases caused by human due to worry. Anxiety in a person's heart weighs him down, but an encouraging word brings him joy. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 25. Worldly grief produces death. 2 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 10. Just as the news of Egypt is heard, so is the disease of Tyre. Isaiah chapter 23 verse 5. So then, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Today has enough trouble of its own. Matthew chapter 6 verse 34. Fear and anxiety are the root cause of illness.
And secondly, lust. Now, David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister named Tamar, and Amnon, her half brother, fell desperately in love with her. Amnon became so obsessed with Tamar that he became ill. 2 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. When we were controlled by our old nature, sinful desires were at work within us, and law aroused these evil desires that produced, resulting in death. Romans chapter 7, verse 5. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. James chapter 1, verse 15. Due to excessive sexual desire and obsession, eating and sleep get affected, leading to some form of mental and physical disorders. Falling into sexual temptation leads one into homosexuality, lopsided love, adultery, and many such sins. We ought to be careful. Thirdly, sins. There is no health in my bones because of my sins. Psalms 38, verse 3. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaining? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? Those who tarry long over wine. Those who go to try mixed wine. Proverbs chapter 23 verse 29 and 30. Since people sin presumptuously, hospitals and incurable diseases are multiplying. Fourthly, participating in the Holy Communion unworthily. Whoever therefore eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty concerning the body and the blood of the Lord. Let a person examine himself then, and so eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without discerning the body eats and drinks judgment on himself. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 27 to verse 30. Namesake Christians who partake of the Holy Communion without self-examination land up in such penalties.
Next, slovenliness. Cleanliness and hygiene. The place where we live in, the water that we drink, the food that we eat, and the clothes that we wear should be clean. If not, we will contract diseases. Cleanliness is next to godliness, says the Tamil proverb. Food habits. In every country, God enables suitable crops, cereals, vegetables, and fruits to grow as per the respective soils. Vitamin deficiency can lead to diseases if you don't eat healthy foods. Exercise. It is not enough for our spirit and soul to be good. Some exercise is vital for a healthy body. Adequate rest. Our workload and mental stress should not be excessive as to spoil our physical health. Adequate rest and enough sleep will keep diseases at bay. Jesus also slept, as we see in, but he, Jesus Christ, was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke him up. Mark chapter 4 verse 38. Next, diseases caused by the devil. Satan sends diseases even to God's children with God's permission. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. Job chapter 2 verse 7. And a woman was there who had been disabled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten herself up completely. Luke chapter 13 verse 11. Then they brought to Jesus a demon-possessed man who was blind and mute. Matthew chapter 12 verse 22. Paul says, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to trouble me, so that I would not become arrogant. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 7. Next, diseases from God. Illness for glorifying God. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus. Lord, look, the one you love is sick. When Jesus heard this, he said, This sickness will not lead to death, but to God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. John chapter 11 verse 3 and 4. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. John chapter 9 verses 1, 2 and 3. God sends sickness sometimes as a punishment. So the Lord sent a pestilence on Israel, and 70,000 men of Israel fell. 1 Chronicles chapter 21 verse 14. On an appointed day, Herod put on his royal robes, took his seat upon the throne, and delivered an oration to them. And the people were shouting, The voice of a God and not of a man. Immediately an angel of the Lord struck him down, because he did not give God the glory, and he was eaten by worms and breathed his last. Acts chapter 12 verse 21 to 23. And for 3 days Paul was without sight, and neither ate or drank. Acts chapter 9 verse 9. Why were Paul's eyes blinded for 3 days? Paul needed this small punishment to completely surrender to God. God sometimes used disease as a weapon or a reminder for us to walk closer to Him. Therefore, at times of our illness, we should not be discouraged and walk away from God. God might be sending us a message through it. Therefore, the Lord Almighty will send a wasting disease upon His sturdy warriors. Under His pomp, a fire will be kindled like a blazing flame. Isaiah chapter 10 verse 16. Contact bgfchennai@gmail.com or reach us at 98422 45060.